webinar. It's our first one in 2021. We skipped one in December, and I've just been longing to see everybody again. As I said, I've started the year a little bit late from having my appendix out. And Tanya reminded me that you don't have to start. Oh, no, it was Martina reminded me you don't have to start late just because your appendix was out. Some people do that anyway. So I said I'd have to learn a little bit more about entrepreneurship from Brent if I'm going to live that way. At the moment, I'm living as a self-employed person. But we're really excited to have Reinhard, and you'll notice we have the same surname, not because we're brother and sister, but because we are husband and wife and just in different rooms of the house. So really excited, of course, as always, to have him as an expert to interview. And Brent, who is from our shared office space, so we often get to connect with him. One of our favorite office spaces is actually our coffee shop down the road.
Yes.
And so,
very nice.
So over the years, we've got to know Brent's expertise around self-employment and entrepreneurship specifically. So Brent actually launched Entrepreneurship School South Africa in 2018, and he's been advising and consulting and coaching entrepreneurs and small business owners for over 8 years. So he himself is an entrepreneur, and he's also a keynote speaker on a number of topics and has spoken across South Africa. So we're very excited to learn from him today around what it takes to be a successful entrepreneur, so that if you're considering that for this year or considering growing your own business, then perhaps there's some ideas that you can glean from Brent on that topic.
Yes.
And then, so welcome, Brent.
Thank
and
you.
then something that often gets confused with entrepreneurship, but is actually quite different, is the topic of self-employment. And for that, we have Reinhard as a self-employed professional coach himself, who has been inspiring and facilitating the learning and development of individuals and groups for over 30 years globally. He has a master's degree in professional coaching, and he is really passionate about walking a road of discovery with his clients, helping them to make career transitions and live in alignment to their meaning and purpose in life, which I obviously get to see the success of being in close proximity. So welcome to both of you. Really excited that you can join us. So let's jump right in, and maybe just to clear up that sometimes muddled definition between entrepreneurship and self-employment. Brent, maybe you can start us off by just really giving us a definition of what does it mean to be an entrepreneur?
Sure. So basically, when it comes to entrepreneurship, you're looking at a person that builds an organization or a business that is system dependent, not people dependent, and this organization actually works without the person being present 24/7. That's in a nutshell what entrepreneurship is.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so that does seem different to being self-employed. And Brent, maybe you can just tell us you're an entrepreneur yourself. What is your favorite part about being an entrepreneur? What do you like about it?
It was interesting. I just had the conversation with a client earlier today about an idea worth working for. Like when you want to commit to something, it must be an idea worth working for. So my favorite part of being an entrepreneur, I would definitely say, is the impact that our programs have on other people, and I see the change in their lives. And for me, that's something that really fuels my tank. That really gets my passion levels up, is the idea that I have that's worth working for.
Okay, I love that. I love that you're speaking to your motivation behind it.
Yes.
Okay, so Reinhard, being self-employed, how does that differ to what Brent has shared about entrepreneurship?
Well, Jane, I think really in Brent's definition, you probably understand the difference, so I think his definition is brilliant, so if your business is dependent on you being present to make money, all the time, and that's the only way your business makes money, you are not an entrepreneur, you are self-employed, which is okay. I'm self-employed and I like being self-employed, because being an entrepreneur, there's certain sort of sets of skills, and Brent will elaborate on it a little bit later, which is sort of synonymous for both, right? But I mean, and I've had this conversation with many people, and I think a lot of people that's sort of typical, you know, is my dentist, my doctor, you know, these type of guys, you know, you think, the dentist or the doctor is a great entrepreneur, but actually they build their time. They're not an entrepreneur unless they patent something or they run a huge clinic where they employ a lot of other doctors. They're not an entrepreneur. They work for themselves, which is great if they want to do that. And I really like being self-employed and not work on a business that makes money beyond me.
So what do you like about being self-employed? You said you like it more than the idea of being an entrepreneur. What do you like about it?
Well, I mean, I work with other people, so it's not like OtterBox, we don't have associates that we work with. But you know, I don't employ them, so it's just the fact that I don't have to worry about a ton of employees that I have to pay salaries for. There's systems, there's, you know, does the system work which I invented? You know, something can go wrong if you have a product or patent or, you know, a ton of staff working. So I just like the simplicity of just working with myself. Although sometimes
no, I hear that. I also enjoy the simplicity, I must say, from my perspective. But Brent, if somebody is coming to you and saying, okay, Brent, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to start my own business. Where do you start with them?
It's a good question. That I just want to touch on one thing quick. Many times these people that actually start a business is a good technician. So technically they say, you know what, I'm a good plumber, I'm going to start a plumbing business. But the only problem they have is just because they're a good plumber doesn't mean they're going to be a good business owner. It's two different things. A plumber doesn't make you a businessman. So normally what I try to focus on when people come to me, when they want to start a business is, first of all, why are you doing what you're doing? You got to understand what the reason is behind you wanting to either start a business or be self-employed. And then after we can get to the purpose of why they're actually starting a business, we can then set out to create a vision and a strategy for the people. That's very important. You got to have a purpose and you need to know in which direction will you actually take this business. And once you have that strategy and that vision in place, then it's about building a foundation for sustainable growth going forward. That foundation consists of 5 building blocks. Building block number 1 is a clear strategy. Building block number 2 is a proper brand. Building block number 3 is your marketing channels. Building block number 4 is your sales systems, and then lastly your operational system. Those 5 building blocks will create a solid foundation for sustainable growth going forward.
I like what you're saying, Brent, and I think it's interesting how all of those aspects that you've mentioned are separate from somebody just really being good at whatever they're good at, in terms of, you know, as you used the example of a plumber. So, but you didn't mention the ability to be a good plumber in any of that. It's all around strategy, branding, systems. So what's the biggest mistake?
Sorry, I just want to touch there. That plumbing skill, let's take the plumber for an example. That plumbing skill becomes applicable in building block number 5, which is your operational systems. But for any entrepreneur, you got to generate leads, you got to convert them into sales, and only then your technical skill becomes important. Other than that, it's like the whole business, only the technical side of your business is only like 20% of the total business that you're operating in. So I just want to mention that.
No, I think that's such a good point. And Brent, the biggest mistake that you find people make when they're wanting to become an entrepreneur?
Yes, so there's obviously a lot of mistakes that I see when people think about entrepreneurship. I know with the media and with newspapers and government, everybody's just blurting out these ideals about entrepreneurship, which is not the case. But I'll say the biggest mistake is that technician mindset mistake. So the plumber thinks because he's a good plumber, he will build a good plumbing business, only to realize that it doesn't work that way. When that plumber now builds his own business, he is the business. So there's no separation between the person and the business, which means it is absolute chaos. The person will burn out in a couple of months, not even a year. He will burn out. Everything is personal. It is just a mess. Secondly, I'll say that mistake of the technical mindset goes hand in hand with a lack of structure and systems. On that topic itself, I can speak for probably 1 or 2 hours. If you don't have any systems or structures in place, you're in real trouble. And it's absolute chaos. There's no control. And then lastly, I'll say people get really caught up with the idea. They think when you're an entrepreneur, you need to be the super creative person, and the more weirder the idea, the more creative you are, and all nonsense like that. A good idea is simply something that you are passionate about, firstly. Secondly, you got to be actually good at it. And then lastly, will that idea make money, yes or no? I always like to think about it, is it a nice to have or is it a need to have? If people need it, it means they need it so badly they're willing to pay me for it. But if it's a nice to have, people will say, you know what, budget's a bit tight. It's very cool, but I don't actually need this.
Absolutely. And I think especially in these times, a lot of people have reassessed their businesses last year in light of what do our clients really need? Because people don't have, well, in most industries, people don't have a lot of excess at the moment for the nice to haves.
Definitely.
And Reinhard, from your perspective, if we look at the self-employed approach, what skills and
Well, I think the 5 points, the building blocks are the same for both. So I mean, just being self-employed, I still need a good system. I need a structure. I need a vision. All those things are applicable if you want to be self-employed too. I think the why, that first question Brent has spoken about, is probably the most important. When you need to choose between the two. So if you are somebody who wants to run a business that makes, as we said in the beginning, it makes money and you employ a bunch of people, and so their skills adds more money. So you actually run the business, and that's your ultimate vision. Then you want to be an entrepreneur, or you create systems or type of products that have licenses that generate money. You can also only be 1 or 2 people doing that, but then the products or the systems that you've created makes the money for you, not your time. So first you need to choose which one do you see yourself at. But even if you choose, I like to work for myself. So the point is, I know I will not make more time than more money than the time I put into it. So I must, if there's 8 hours a day I coach people, it's only that time I'm in front of the screen, or when it was COVID, it's more in front of the screen, not in COVID, but that's the time I can build. But I like that, and that's good for me. Now, if your industry, and that's the thing, some people like to be, what doesn't matter, okay, I'm in coaching, doesn't matter what the thing is, but your living expenses or what you need is 10 rand or dollars or euros, but you can only bill, 6 a month. Then you need to start thinking, is this really what you're done do? Even if you're up to 100% capacity, your market, whatever you want to, is only going to allow you to be 6. Then you need to say, well, either I need to work for somebody else, or I need to build a business and become an entrepreneur. So then you could, because that choice is also that. Some industries allow you to build more than other industries. So that's something else to consider.
Yeah, really good points. Thanks, Reinhard. I'm wondering, do you have any examples that you can share of somebody or a client who was considering, should I be an entrepreneur, or should I be self-employed, or should I just continue working for someone and be employed by a corporate? Any things that you can share on what went into that decision-making process for any of your clients?
Brent or Reinhard?
For Reinhard.
Me.
Yeah, just leading off what you just said. Yeah.
Okay. I think the most common one is probably, should I be employed by a corporate or company versus either self-employed or entrepreneur? That's often the most common thing that I get people to talk to. And the thing we speak through, you know, just this morning, I spoke to somebody and we said, you know, it's one thing because sometimes people go, they're in a corporate or work for somebody and they go, oh, I don't like this and I don't like that. I should start my own thing. And I just said, well, you also remember the people working in your company, some people like that will be your clients, or some people like that will be your suppliers. And some people like that, even as an entrepreneur, you might employ. Just because you don't like the people in your company or the hours, being self-employed or not, it doesn't make that go away. And I think that's what Brent alluded to, you know, this ideal sort of dream scenario. You got to be realistic about it. And it's going to be tough, you know, and there's more. And I think that's the big thing. I mean, remember, Jane, years ago, when you were actually had your recruitment company, we had a lot of older, probably more gentlemen, got packages, and then they bought these franchises.
Mm-hmm.
But they thought, oh, well, great, I'll just put a manager in this franchise, whatever it is. I don't want to name the franchise names because it's certainly not the franchise fault, you know. And then they go and play golf. And then they think, oh, this thing is going to make money. And 3 years later, they come back to your door and say, I've lost all my money because I bought whatever restaurant or whatever it is. And they've never learned to be an entrepreneur. You know, so
yeah, you're right, Reinhard, and I think those were very sad stories where I felt like there were a number of people that I would interview, as you say, when I had my recruitment business, and people would come in, their shoulders hung low, saying, you know, this was what I was going to retire on, and I decided to take all of my retirement savings and put it into this business. And it didn't work out, and they had to start again from scratch. And now these are people who are way into their working years, almost at an age where they would be considered for retirement. So it's true, you really have to think about, why do I want to do this? What am I trying to escape from, perhaps? And realistically, is it going to be an escape? And as Brent, you were saying earlier, why do I actually want to start this business? What is my why?
Very important.
And you spoke about the why, Brent, and you also spoke about the systems that you need to have in place. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that. What kind of systems does an entrepreneur need?
I just want to add on what Reinhard said about an ideal world. I just want to say this. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it. There's a reason why there's so little people that actually become successful entrepreneurs. It's really difficult. And you got to be focused. You got to be disciplined to build these systems, which I will mention now. So basically, when it comes to systems, that's a great question. So I already mentioned the 5 areas that I work with a client when they come to me, and then from those 5 building blocks, you actually create departments in order to escape the. For me, as an entrepreneur, I always advise my clients to escape the trap of getting stuck in your business. And that is to create 5 departments, which is marketing, sales, operations, compliance, and management. Once I have those 5 departments, then I need 3 basic systems for each department. And those 3 systems, firstly, is for every single department, I need an information system. Where am I going to keep my information that's happening in this department? That, as easily as possible, I suggest Google Sheets. Brilliant tool, it's for free, and it helps you to track every piece of data that you can in that specific department. The second system that you must have is a planning system. For every single department, your marketing must have a plan in place. Your sales must have a plan. Your operations must have a plan. Everything must be planned. And that plan gets originated from the end result of my business. Why am I doing this and where am I going? Once I have that, I can set up monthly, weekly, and daily goals and to-dos. So basically, that planning system is your to-do list, but just very well structured. And then the last system for each department is your communication system. How will I communicate in my marketing? How will I communicate with a client? How will I communicate with my staff? That communication system is very important, and it can simply be explained as email templates that you have in place for certain communication that occurs over and over and over. Also, how will I make a sale? Because that's another thing people struggle with. How do I sell? It's not that difficult. What was the message in the marketing? That needs to be backed up with your communication in the sales pitch. So those three systems, very important for every single department that you have in your business.
Yeah, I really like what you're saying there, Brent. And I think you mentioned that the other day as well, that having those templates is a way of you maintaining quality control in your own business, where you might employ people who are more junior, and now you think, oh, how do I make sure that what goes out to my clients is something that represents our brand?
Yes, exactly.
But often that kind of work, the planning, the systems, that's not the part that the entrepreneur or the self-employed person loves. They usually love what they do. But I don't know many people who just love setting up systems and doing the admin side of it. Do you love it? Okay.
I love the system.
That's why you train people in it.
It's like, it's incredible.
Yeah. No, but Jane, that's, you know, from somebody who's self-employed, that's all those systems are still relevant to me as somebody who's self-employed. And I think Brent will agree with me. And unless your dad or your mom left you $1 billion, you know, a lot of people start off very small, you know. So yeah, you know, so in the beginning, you probably all those departments, you know, so, but it's important to make, as Brent said, even, you know, a little bit, make that compartments there, you know, and in the beginning, you know, I remember when I started off, okay, before I was in coaching, was in marketing, but okay, the past 15 years plus I'm in coaching. You know, you start somewhere. You got to start coach the first person. People start, or if you're a doctor, you see the first patient, or you're in IT or graphic design. So you got to sell. You need to do something about marketing. And some people go, oh, you know, I'm in IT, I'm going to start my business. And then they forgot they actually needed canvas clients. You go, oh no, I hate speaking to people, you know. Well, how would they know about you? You know, so you got to have some form of sales and marketing, you know, so. And
that's true.
Patient, you know, these things, very few things, you know, we read about the Microsoft, the Bill Gates, the Richard Bransons, and so forth, you know, Mike Shuttleworth. But that's the 0.00001%. What we don't see in social media is the 90% of people who really, really started, and more than half of them fell off the bus. And so I'm not saying don't start your own business or work for yourself or be an entrepreneur, but have don't be disillusioned. You know, as Brent said, it is tough. You know, it's tough. And
so I hear what you're saying, Reinhard, that probably a lot of your conversations then end up being around encouraging people and helping them focus on what's really needed to be focused on. And processing the emotional side of it. That's a guess. I know that's sometimes what I speak to people about. Yeah, sorry, Brent, yeah?
So for me, when I think about motivation and discipline and stuff like that, I know Steve Jobs, for instance, said that he's convinced about what separates what separates successful entrepreneurs from unsuccessful entrepreneurs is pure perseverance. But when I actually listened to that, I realized perseverance is not something that you can force. It's a result. It's a result of whatever you committed to. And if you committed to that, you're accountable to that, then you must obviously believe in the idea behind why you are actually doing what you're doing. So again, it comes down to what me and Reinhard said in the beginning. You got to understand why you're doing this. If you understand it, you commit to it. And that commitment will now lead you to actually persevere through hell and high water.
So a lot of it is establishing that why up front, That's definitely a stage I'm hearing from both of you should never be skipped.
And then the discipline to execute, which is, discipline has almost become a swear word in modern society. People just want the fun stuff.
Everything needs to be free and yeah, but I mean, I guess for myself, even being a self-employed coach and trainer, I think there's parts that are difficult and parts that are easier. But for example, I'm willing to sacrifice seasonal business to be able to have the flexibility to spend time with my family. So there's a strong why behind that helps me push through the tougher times. Yeah, so I guess we all have to figure out our why and what is important and what drives us. Reinhard, yes.
No, go ahead. I'll jump back to that.
No, jump in.
So I think the big thing is what Brent talked about, and I agree with him. It's not just perseverance. I mean, you got to be realistic. Just because you think you're a brilliant flute player, you might be great and you want to start a school that teaches people how to play the flute. You have to be realistic. Is there a market, of people who want to learn to play the flute? It doesn't matter if you're the best flute player in the world. If there's not a market about somebody who wants to learn to play flute, all the perseverance in the world will not make you an entrepreneur or somebody who's self-employed. Well, you can, but you're not going to make money. So you have to be
right.
You have to be realistic about your market. And I think sometimes people, that to me, is sometimes people are like, just because I'm good at it, and if I work hard, it's going to be a success. And that's simply not true. You're gonna make your life very hard for yourself. So that first conversations about why you want to either not work for a company or why you want to either work for yourself or start a business as an entrepreneur, and those conversations are absolutely crucial.
Yeah, no, I hear that coming through very strongly from both of you. So maybe we can end with you sharing a story of somebody who you helped to become a successful entrepreneur, or somebody you helped to become successfully self-employed, and just touch on the parts that you needed to connect on that journey. So what were their questions? What were their struggles? What did they need to overcome? Because I think, perhaps those are elements that we can resonate with as people seeking that out. Yeah, Brent?
Sure. So I'm assuming I'm going first.
Go for it.
So basically in 2019, Neil Smuts came to me, and he had like a side hustle, which he did over the weekends at nights because he was full-time employed. And he actually was pretty successful with the side hustle. I think his turnover at that stage were quite decent, but he couldn't make the jump from employment to actually thinking about the side hustle as a business. So the first thing that I basically did is we literally touched on why he was doing the side hustle and what was the potential behind it and so forth. And then he actually realized that this side hustle becoming a business is the dream that he wants in his life. He wants to pursue it. He's passionate about it. It is a good idea. It is making money. He can make a living off this idea. And then once we've established that purpose behind the business, then we went out and we clarified his vision. Now, vision always comes down to three things. You got to understand a vision is the purpose to why I'm doing what I'm doing. A vision consists of your strategy, and then the vision consists of the tactical plan to make that strategy and that vision a reality. So we then clarified his vision, and after his vision was in place, we literally got down and built the foundation for him, which is the branding, the marketing, the sales, the operations, the compliance. We also took a look at his financials. So everything that's practical and that needed to be in place as a foundation for his business, we basically assisted him with. And then we, in the middle of the program that I did for Neil, we assisted with marketing as well. And he started to generate leads, and then he had the systems to back up those leads and converted them into sales. And that for me was beautiful. And actually up to today, Like Neil sends me WhatsApps every now and then, and it's normally when I go through a big dip in my life and I'm like, oh, he's useless. I don't know where I'm going. You know, we all get those moments. And then all of a sudden I'll get a WhatsApp from Neil and he thanks me and he's grateful for what I helped him with in his life. And that normally picks me up. And that's the idea that is really worth working for me. And this guy especially stands out when I think of all the clients that I've helped over the last 2-3 years.
Oh, I love that story, Brent. And I think,
and
yeah,
sorry,
you said
just one more thing. He actually quit his job at the end of the 12-week program. He quit his job and he became full-time employed, or he actually started that business full-time. And that was a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I think that's very rewarding. And I think I hear your why coming through very strongly in that story as well. So I've shared a couple of links in the chat box that you shared with me earlier about Neil.
Yes.
Thanks,
yes.
Brent. And Reinhard, from your side, is there anyone who stands out?
Yeah,
I'm sure there are many, but which one?
No. Well, other than Brent, you have to realize two things. Most of my coaching is probably 90% in corporate companies, so very rarely I would help somebody to start a business, you know. And if that comes, there will really only be 1 or 2 conversations if this is the thing that they want to really do. So I use a repertory grid system. It's a tool in coaching, and we talk about, you know, should you be employed, not, and there's a technique in doing that. But once they actually say, listen, this is what I want to do, and they've gone through the decision process and they made all that, they calculated the risk, I would hand them to somebody like Brent, you know, so I'm not further involved in building that person's business, you know. So, I mean, I think last year we spoke to somebody that both you and me know, who is a drama student who wanted to go to London, couldn't go to lockdown. We had a conversation about how can you use his talents to start a business, you know, and so, and, you know, lo and behold, you know, by the end of last year, he was up and running. It was a little bit, you know, very small in the beginning, but then, you know, it really started getting going. But I didn't do what Brent does. Brent has a speciality to help people start businesses and run businesses. That I really am in the beginning is, should they do it? What's their dream? And help them figure out, really, is this what they want to do? If they're definitely sure, I move them to Brent. I remember a couple of years ago, a big hotel group in South Africa, there's 2 huge ones. One of the 2 retrenched a lot of people, but they were really kind, and they asked me to travel to all the hotels and casinos, and I had to speak to the people retrenched on this topic. You know, do you want to work for yourself? Should you be employed? And it really helps such a lot of people just being realistic about what it means to be self-employed, work for somebody, or actually start a company or business, entrepreneur. And I think that's a super valuable discussion. And once people are cleared with that, I can hand them over to the expertise of Brent or people like that.
Thanks, Reinhard. Yeah, I love what you're saying about that. It's so important for people to first decide, is this for me? And once they have decided and they want to set that up, then Brent can help them with setting that up. But I think what you've shared aligns very well with what you do around helping people find something that is in line with their meaning and their purpose and what they're designed to do in life and what really fulfills them. And so important to uncover that from the start so that you know which direction to go in.
Exactly.
I know for myself, I also find that very rewarding to work with people who are stuck in terms of, how do I show up in an interview? How do I show up online? How can I market myself? That part that you said, you know, people don't always embrace. And it's very rewarding. I think, and I'm sure everybody in this webinar today has a part of their work that they find very rewarding when they see other people's lives change as a result of the input that they've been able to give. So.